All right, welcome back to Liquid Lunch. It's me, Hugh, and Sue is here today on a Tuesday.
Hello.
We're very happy to have Martin McDermott joining us here today. And we're going to talk about Teranet. And we're going to talk about, it's a bit of a personal story, right, Martin? Because this is about land titles in Ontario, and in particular, your mom's house?
My mom's property, she owned a half a land title, I guess you could say, a part ownership in the property. And it was convenient and easy in this electronic land registration system to transfer titles now. And it's transferred sight unseen by the true homeowner.
Okay, so let's just give a little background on Teranet and what it is, because I remember in the old days I used to sell real estate. So there was two land title systems in Ontario. At that time, there was the Registry system and the land title system. And then my understanding is that because the internet and technology and everything like that, they wanted to put it all online, and they came up with this thing called Teranet.
That's right.
Can you give us a bit of background on Teranet?
Teranet is an offshoot of a pilot study that started under the Ontario government in the late 70s. But in the early 80s, some people got into the back room of the Ministry of Commercial and Consumer Services, and or Consumer Relations at that time. And what they did is they convinced the people therein that maybe this digitization of the Ontario parcel mapping could be done to a property identification number called the land title number. And this whole process could be done a whole lot faster, cheaper, and better than the government could do it. And these individuals were venture capitalists, and that was all they were.
So in other words, what used to be a provincially government-run system, and it was kind of cumbersome. I remember looking up, who had title to properties. I'd have to go down to the registry office and borrow some big volumes from the back there, and that
borrow them from in the back, and you went through a clerk at the county.
Yeah, exactly.
To do that.
Right. And so kind of slow and cumbersome in the internet age. But what you're saying is that, because I thought Teranet was a government organization, but you're saying it was essentially a private company that approached the government to take responsibility for this very important government function.
That's right. Yeah, it's called a key public infrastructure project. And what they did is they believed that they were going to be able to do it faster, better, and cheaper, and they did neither. It was worse. If the government had done it, they would have responded to the problems that were first discovered. And what the Law Society discovered is in the first year of operation, when the system came online in 2000, by 2001, mortgage fraud had quadrupled. Quadrupled, using the electronic system over the paper-based Torrens land registry.
Sorry, did you say threefold?
Quadruple.
Oh, quadruple. My God.
Fourfold.
So mortgage fraud, and what is that exactly, mortgage fraud?
Mortgage fraud comes in two different forms typically. There's the title theft mortgage fraud, where the property is actually stolen out of the land registry, conveyed to a fraudster or an individual who has worked in concert with the lawyer. When they're both fraudsters. And so what we're seeing is that a lot of that is exactly that, is that the lawyers have not been duped as much as they've been active participants.
So they're actually committing criminal acts.
Committing criminal acts for which the Law Society is the self-policing, adjudicating body, and they don't go after these lawyers. And so I did a lot of research to show how many lawyers were getting into the system, stealing multiple properties before the Law Society would even act, much less would they give them the appropriate discipline.
Okay. So do you want to maybe start with the story of your mom's property and what happened?
Okay. My mom lived in Ancaster, and she lived with my sister and brother-in-law, and things went bad living there. She became a victim of elder abuse. She moved out, and within about a year of her moving out, the fraudster accessed her land registry title, transferring it to my brother-in-law and my sister unaware, and a mortgage was taken on the property for $140,000. There was two sets of documents created, though, when they accessed this system. One was at $130,000 a month prior. That got deleted from the system. And then the one that did go through was $140,000, and it was in May of 2006. And my mother died in December of 2007. And it wasn't until February that we discovered the stolen title, and that we had discovered that it was to purchase things for my brother-in-law.
I see. So your brother-in-law was a part of this,
Complicit with the lawyer.
and the lawyer.
Yeah.
So was the lawyer? Who was the lawyer working for?
The lawyer was working at that time in a firm called Turkster Mazza
No, I
in
mean
Hamilton.
in this particular.
He was working for the buyers first, and he was signed as to working for my mother. But you see, my mother didn't have a lawyer, and there were no real estate agents, and there was no document with her signature on it.
And sorry, who was the buyer?
That was my brother-in-law.
So
Paul
in other
Morrison.
words, okay, so your brother-in-law hired the lawyer, and they basically.
No, the lawyer approached my brother-in-law because the lawyer had access to the system, and he's not a real estate lawyer.
So initially it was the lawyer's idea? And,
Yeah, the
or-
lawyers have had access to a system that
Okay.
doesn't have any guard at the front
Right.
gate.
Right.
Okay, so they have trust, implicit trust at the front gate of this
So you're
land
saying-
registry software.
Right. So
Called
they,
Teranet.
sorry.
Yeah.
So they can approach, for example, the brother-in-law or someone and say, hey, do you want in on this
Yeah.
scam, basically?
That's right,
Like,
exactly.
So are you saying they can
Exactly.
steal? I mean, someone with a malice intent can steal any property in Ontario now by
Pretty much.
by infiltrating the Teranet system.
Just going into the Teranet system with the credentials to do it given to them by Teranet,
Yeah.
and Teranet doesn't have any sort of parsing policy to actually validate whether this person's a professional in real estate.
So how do you check on that? Like, what would you need to do? Like,
If you
would
found
they-
you would go to the land registry office and you would check your property to see if you still own it. If you
How
still,
often do you have to do that?
Well,
In this day and age,
this
like,
is the
isn't that a
question, you
scary
see.
question? Like,
even
how-
if I had gone a week before they did it,
yeah.
it would have printed that my mother had her title, you see, and a week after they transferred it, you wouldn't know until you actually have a reason to check the title.
Yeah,
So you
that's
wouldn't
how
have-
people
That's the
normally do.
problem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's
normally
what I-
you wouldn't have a reason to check your title other than the individuals who are running the operation
Yeah.
have failed to secure the system because they left it at the full discretion of the Law Society of Upper Canada's PRD department, that's Professional Regulations Division of the Law Society of Upper Canada.
Okay. So in other words, the system is still suffering from this defect,
Exactly. It was a defect from the day it was launched.
and
the-
they haven't corrected.
They haven't
That's correct.
corrected it. And TerraView first launched in 2000 under the version number of 4.2.
Okay. Sorry, what was the name of that?
TerraView.
TerraView.
TerraView software.
So
Yeah,
you're saying it
yeah.
hasn't been corrected in almost
That's right.
20 years?
Yes, what we found out is that the land registry is divided between three pieces of software. And it's glued together by a process called E-Reg. And all of these software and the process is registered to Teranet.
Okay, which is a private company.
Private company, which was created out of a company called Real Data Ontario that changed its name right after it got the contract in 1991 by Bob Ray. But in 1999, there were three pieces of legislation passed under the Peterson government, and those pieces of legislation is the Assessment Act, Land Titles Act, and Registry Act. They were all passed in the same year to complete this process to open up for the privatization of the system. So it was written into those pieces of legislation that the Ontario Land Registry was deemed to be privatized.
So this is actually a very important matter because, I mean, there are economists that will claim that one of the reasons for the success of the West, right, is because it protects private property rights. But what you're saying here essentially is that private property rights in Ontario are in extreme danger from this situation.
That's right. Yeah, it's totally open.
So, and now in your situation, what, and for other people out here, most people haven't probably checked their titles of their property, but maybe now they have a reason to do so. But what kind of remedy was available to yourself or would be available to other people?
Well, this is the first thing. If you discover that a lawyer has stolen your property, the last thing you want to do is hire a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're going to take more money from you, and then they're going to run you through a particular route that will not get you your property back unless your property had title insurance.
Right.
If you had title insurance, the lawyers take care of this problem in the back room. So you don't know how the banks and the lawyers and the insurance companies sorted that out.
But what happens to you? Do you get your property back, or do you get some money, or what is
If
that?
you've got title insurance, they just fix the problem. Okay, if you don't have title insurance, you're going to be suckered in by first hiring a lawyer, and that's a big problem. Because that lawyer is going to spin you off to another lawyer, to another lawyer, to another lawyer, because no lawyer is going up against some of these lawyers who have been doing this, especially these particular lawyers who are members of this organization called the St. Thomas More Lawyers Guild. This is an exclusive group of individuals, and we know that they have had a connection to the very beginnings of this company. So we know that there's a connection between the St. Thomas More Lawyers Guild and the privatization of Ontario's land registry.
So I've never heard of this organization, the St. Thomas More Lawyers Guild. Can you have you ever heard of that, Sue?
I don't believe so, no.
What is it?
This is what it is here. It's a fraternity. I have emails from a Bishop Daniel Mean up in Peterborough, but he was a priest in Ancaster, and I met with him in 2010 to try and resolve this problem internally, because the people who are linked to this, the St. Thomas More Lawyers Guild, have an annual mass that they do in Hamilton, in Ottawa, and in Toronto. And these are influential Catholic lawyers come together with the judiciary, that's your prosecutors and your lawyers, your police, and your bishops. And the bishops participate in the mass where they pay, I guess the Thomas More Lawyers Guild sponsors the mass. And so the participants pay tithing to come to the mass. And this is an influencers group beyond compare. An influencers group.
Never heard of it.
They're
Here it is.
they're an unincorporated association.
That's a 61st annual?
Yeah, the 60th.
Yeah,
So they've been around
so they've been going for a
some time.
little while. Now in Hamilton, that's a different thing. I don't think they've been going that long in Hamilton. It was Philomena Tassi, MP, Hamilton West Ancaster Dundas, that started the Hamilton branch of the St. Thomas More Lawyers Guild while she was chaplain at St. Thomas More Catholic High School in Hamilton.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So now you're saying that. Well, so were you saying that this guild of lawyers was somehow associated with the company that started Teranet?
Yes. Basically, what I researched is I found that it was an insider lobby group of the Federal Liberal Party of Canada, you see.
Yeah.
So the Federal Liberal Party of Canada had an insiders influencers group that was in the back doors of the Ministry of Commercial and Consumer Relations, and they were pandering to two people. One is here in some documents, and the other one is Bonnie Foster, and let me just see if I can find the document quickly, because these people were pretty important. It was Art Daniels.
So,
And
were they provincial government employees under that
yes,
ministry?
they were both provincial government employees,
Okay.
and then they transferred, or one of them transferred to Teranet. But everybody who was working in that office had to transfer to the new company and release themselves from their government positions. and most of them were scared.
Scared to do what?
Princeton University did a story on them. It's called Innovations for Successful Societies. It's published in 2017, and there you will read 20 pages of a pretty good synoptic about the beginnings of Teranet.
It sounds positive. The title sounds positive about Teranet.
It was Princeton University mocking us, Canadians,
Oh, mocking.
for allowing the successful society, that's the Law Society of Upper Canada, for taking over your land registry and turning it into a land registry company that has no transparency. And that's what they pointed out, and that laws had to be changed to make the business model work. And that when they discovered problems in the system, they discovered that they were after old people's properties. Properties without mortgages.
So who discovered that?
That was Princeton University, and they did a research project into our privatized electronic land registry, which is the first in the world
Right.
to ever have been created.
Oh, really?
Right.
How long, when was that roughly?
It was 1984 when they were in the back rooms of the Ministry of Government and Commercial
The
Relations.
Princeton study was?
And then Princeton Study came out in 2017.
Do you have
Oh,
a copy
okay.
of that here by
Yes, I
chance?
do.
We should, by the way, we should put links down below.
This is
to-
what we'll
to
do.
these
Is
things.
we'll put all of the links, because all of my evidence is
Yeah.
factually based in
Yeah, yeah.
documents.
Right.
And what I wanted to announce today is that on this show especially, is because it will reach out to the right people, because I have Ontario landowners, for example, tuning in today.
Yeah.
This is a very large organization. I recommend anybody interested in property rights contact your local branch of Ontario Landowners Association, and don't ask them how they're going to help you. Ask how you can help them. Okay? Because I came to help them
Right.
understand, because everybody is getting spun around, and I hacked the system right into the bailiwick of the Law Society of Upper Canada.
So it sounds like the land title system in Ontario is still a mess.
It's a total mess. The Law Society did the best study right here, and everybody needs to get this link and go on and see this, because what this is, it's mortgage fraud, March 24, 2005. It was a report to Convocation, and it was purpose of report, information. Okay, now, in this, I will say that is a total confession of the Law Society of Upper Canada, an objective review about the security practices of Teranet. They had a problem. The Law Society was telling them in 2005 to fix your problem. And what Teranet responded to them was they weren't going to fix the problem until the government tells them exactly what to fix. So I'm telling them exactly what to fix. And it is, you have to fix this guy called Agostino Russo, the chief legal officer of the Teranet company. And his image is right here. And then I went out to see if I could meet Doug Ford about this, you see? And Doug Ford, during the election campaign, you see, that's the only time that these people are accessible.
Right.
But this is the guy inside the Teranet that's the bully lawyer,
Yeah.
and he beats down on even the director of titles, Jeffrey Lamb. And he just beat up on the new guy who came in from the UK to lead Omer's infrastructure.
Can I see this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Omer's infrastructure is where you'd think that you'd find an infrastructure being managed like the land registry, but it's actually managed through Omer's Investors Direct, or Direct Investments, I think it's called. And so these people are getting notification today that we're triggering the event payment agreement. This is part of the last amendment that Dalton McGuinty did in 2011 or 2010 with the Teranet company expanding their contract right to 2067. Years ahead of schedule.
So Teranet's got, right now their contract is till 2067,
2067.
but they haven't fixed the problems.
Exactly. So we found a fraud in one of these agreements.
Yeah.
And
You
so
mean the agreements to extend?
the agreements to extend.
Okay.
And it had to do with HST and $130 million.
Okay.
And they owe $50 million on the royalties for 2017 and 18.
They owe that to the federal
Each.
government?
They owe that to the provincial government. $50 million
Yeah.
and another $50 million. So $100 million plus the interest for the overdue.
Yeah.
You see, and there's a calculation in the TIPA, that's the Triggered Event Payment Agreement of 2010 and 2011.
So there's an agreement that something can trigger an event.
This triggers the event today.
And what is the event?
The event is that I am giving a valuation to Teranet right now here today. To
Yeah.
the best of my knowledge, that company is worth $500 million. It is not worth $3 billion. It has approximately $2.5 billion of debt that's owed to owners of real property who have had their property stolen. And then there's going to be the problems of cost of fixing the problem. You see, they're going to have to fix it. I've said that you could add 5 data fields to Purview and TerraView, the 2 different softwares. Purview is what the lenders get, okay?
I
And
see.
TerraView is what the lawyers get. GeoWarehouse is what everybody gets. Everybody can go on to GeoWarehouse and look up anything.
Okay, so I got to ask you. So here's a picture of you with Doug Ford, the new Premier of Ontario, and what did Doug say about this? Does
Okay.
he want to get behind this? I mean,
That was during the election campaign. I sat down and I spoke with Dean, his right-hand man that just resigned. I can't remember his last name now. And I explained to him, going through this little file here, about the Walton International Group. And the Walton International Group is an offshore syndicate private placement program option investment that people have to get into if they wish. And the properties that they look for are agriculturally zoned land just outside of city areas where it is expected the sprawl will continue. And
well,
so-
that's a whole strategy. If you want
It's
to
a
make money in real
strategy.
estate, you found the next town,
Exactly.
right?
Next hot place.
Exactly. And so it works very well for them. However, what they were doing is they're going back onto the land registry within 2 years of acquiring a piece of property for, say, $1.7 million. And then they'll go back onto the land registry and they'll re-register it for $7,600,000 and change
You mean as the purchase price?
as the purchase price.
That therefore they can
After-
justify a larger next mortgage.
After they've taken it offshore and they put 250 Malaysians' names on that property, each with a share of $10,000 per share, some of them buying many, many more shares than just one.
So wait a second. You're saying that's what's happening in
That
Ontario?
is what's happening right now in Ontario.
Well, who is behind that? So what they're stealing the land.
No,
using
no.
the-
In this case, they're not stealing the land.
What?
They're actually purchasing the land.
And
But
then
they go to a
inflating.
farmer
Yeah.
and they pay above market value
Yeah.
to the farmer, and the farmer goes, sure,
Yeah.
no for sale sign,
Right.
you
No,
see?
Yeah.
So nobody knows that the farmer next door sold to an offshore private placement syndicate investment program,
Right.
and that's been sold over in Malaysia and Singapore and elsewhere. And this Walton International Group got shut down in Kuala Lumpur.
And who are they?
Walton International,
Yeah.
they are an offshore land banker
Are they
that
Canadian?
came out of Quebec, came out of Calgary.
I see.
So it's not a big organization. Walton was not a big organization, but when they went into creditor protection,
Yeah.
which was 3 weeks after the OPP started printing off these land registry documents, and they started printing up a stack of them, it sounds to me like somebody inside of Teranet tipped them off, and then they filed for creditor protection.
So in one sense, it's a separate issue.
That's a separate.
This is a separate issue.
Yeah.
But
That's
on
right.
the other hand, if people, insiders, I mean, you're not saying, you don't, I mean, that's not proven, but if insiders at Teranet are tipping off companies about and allowing them to protect their perhaps questionable gains,
That's right.
then,
And how did they protect it is they deleted them.
because they could just do that.
They didn't.
They could just delete them off the system.
This is what we showed the OPP last week again. And
Yeah.
I've been in policing council.
Yeah.
And I brought it to policing council in OPP in Brant County. Lisa Anderson, in February, we dropped in to see how they were making from my presentation in December. And she just looked back at me and she says, criminal. Investigation has gone criminal. So that means that we, you and me, we don't get any information until the OPP have done their job. And so I went in there, asked him, how long is this going to take? And he said, that is Daniel Twynham, detective of Paris Police, OPP detective, said, if you want to get this done faster, take it to the media. In other words, here we are.
Well,
We're taking it to the media, and then owners will understand they owe $230 million for the royalties and the overdue HST that we discovered. Written off by Dwight Duncan, provincial minister of finance, writing off a federal debt of a company with 4 insiders of the company, and we show how they actually did it in the document, and Dwight Duncan's signature is on a separate page. They weren't in the same room together, and it looks like a forged signature.
okay.
So that's why we're triggering this company today, so that we can get that payment, because it has to be triggered. It's a calculation. The government has to appoint a valuator. Teranet has to appoint a valuator. They have to look at all of the value-added data products that Teranet has profited from, and the government gets 50% of the profits.
So is this going to actually happen?
It
Martin?
has to happen, because
But will it happen?
this guy
Yeah.
now knows about it, and my guy in Brant County, Will Boma, I like to do collages, because collages actually explain things. Okay, Will Boma is an ophthalmologist and optometrist, and he's experiencing what's called willful blindness right now, because I went into his office on July 31st in Toronto, and I came in with the Walton documents, my mother's documents, and other documents that are showing value frauds and title theft on the land registry. He hasn't been able to find the minister responsible yet. At first it was Bill Walker, or no, it was, secondly it was Bill Walker, and we still have yet to get a minister responsible. When I wrote Kathleen Wynne, I have emails from her, I have emails from Mario Sergio, and I have videos of Mario Sergio running from me from a seniors event when I wanted to ask him about the prevalence of title theft among seniors' properties. And he wouldn't want to answer those questions.
So maybe this is okay. So there's a lot of information
There's
here.
a lot of information.
We're going to put links down below, I mean, what are you going to do next? And I think we want to give people some calls to action, what they can do, right?
Yes.
Especially maybe certain people that have been victims of title theft.
That's right. I've just recently met with CARP, Canadian Association of Retired Persons. Ontario Landowners is on side. A local group called Sustainable Brant came on side very quickly. And the Mohawk of the Grand River came on side. Okay, now a lot of people don't know about the Mohawk of the Grand River, but I saw you had the fellow on your show, Dave.
Sonic Dave.
Sonic Dave. Awesome,
Yeah.
Sonic Dave. Okay, now I met Dave out at Canada Village.
Okay.
And Dave knows that I know the Mohawk of the Grand River and who's really got the authority over the Haldeman.
The Haldeman Tract.
The Haldeman
What's
Tract.
that, 12 miles on either side of the Grand River?
6 miles on each side of the
6
Grand
miles.
River. And so what I did is, as a database developer and a challenger to this Teranet company, I told them that I can write them a blockchain land registry. And so what Bill Squire did is he wrote to the Teranet overseer, that's a government guy in the ministry's office, Jeffrey Lem, director of titles, and Jeffrey Lem, director of titles, wrote him back a very nice letter saying, you know, notwithstanding the creation of your land registry, he will continue to administer the provincial land registry. And he also said that there's no taxes to collect on the Mohawk's land registry.
So, okay, so what can, I mean, where can people get in touch with you if they want to follow up, or?
People could get in touch with me, they could get in touch with Ontario landowners, they could get in touch with their ministers, the Minister of Government and Consumer Services. They could get in touch with the Deputy Finance Minister, because that's the people who have to trigger.
This is
the payment
of Ontario.
of Ontario.
So they still have to trigger it.
They have to trigger it. The government has to trigger it. I'm just telling them, go collect our money. It's $230 million plus. And Agostino Russo is going to be a very angry man tomorrow. Okay, because he was notified through Kenton Bradbury, the fellow who just came in through the UK to head up Omer's infrastructure group. And so he sounded like a really nice guy when I talked to Kenton Bradbury. He had empathy in his voice when he was hearing about how people are losing their properties and the nightmare that the Law Society puts people through.
Okay, so what about other people there that want to do something about the land title situation in Ontario, or people that have had their properties stolen out from under them? What can they do?
Okay,
Or who can they contact?
I think what we're going to do is we're going to be calling a protest and arranging a protest at
Yeah.
Queen's Park,
Yeah.
and we're going to.
I was looking at that photo.
Yeah, see, this is where I
Yeah.
was. I was up in Ottawa on June 1st of 2016, and this is my fight against euthanasia. Okay, my mother got accidentally euthanized because my brother-in-law slipped into her hospital room and made an end-of-life decision, something called comfort measures. Nobody was in the room when he did that, and my mom was having tea and Jell-O the night before. But she had just woke up, had a student doctor come into her room. Hamilton Health Sciences chief of oncology is very upset about it. We had 2 meetings with him. He found that the person responsible was my mother's oncologist. But go and try and get any compensation from a hospital when a wrongful death like this happens. It's very difficult. But the worst thing was discovering a few months later that all of our family's inheritance was gone.
So who can people get in touch with if they want to follow up?
If they want to follow up, we'll follow up on the Duke Willis show, because
Okay.
I will be back onto the Duke Willis show. I want everybody to know that I've been doing them last 3 weekends in a row, and you will be able to go onto the Duke Willis show. It's called Politically Speaking, and Duke's a fine man. He's a real patriot. He flies the Canadian flags on his car, and I said, well, I kind of think, well, why do you do that? Canada's done. Canada is done. I am just showing you my Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and all I have in that is conscience. And I won't allow this land registry to be robbing people of Ontario until 2067. We're going to take it away from Teranet. That is, we're going to take away our land registry from Omer's, because we found out that Omer's made a contract through Teranet to get all of the data from Equifax on Omer's members. I think that's wrong. That Omer's has all of their member contributors, Equifax data, and their property ownership data. They shouldn't have that information.
Okay, Martin. Well, listen, thanks for coming in and telling us about this. Is there a website or anything
Yeah, I
for
noticed.
any organization that's
For
doing something
yourself,
about this?
There's a website that was put up by a lady named Trudy Upchan, and I think it's real estate for seniors' rights or something of that nature. It's real estate for, oh gosh, I shouldn't forget
Well,
that.
we'll put it down below. So people can-
But this was an
check
attorney that was hired out of Hamilton, Michael Bourdin, to actually secure for these people working at the Law Society of Upper Canada a defense. So he was hired to defend these people, and this is what one group of farmers up in, I believe it was Picton, and what happened there was they lost 3 farms out of 7 to a fraudster inside the system. And so they figured it out. It's lawyers with Teranet, Land Title Service Ontario is privatized as well, MPAC, is the next connection. I didn't even touch on MPAC, but MPAC gets the data exclusively from Teranet, nowhere else. And that all equals property fraud. And so what I wanted to show MPAC is that the Walton International group's value frauds put everybody in Brant County's taxes up artificially. So now you see how it's all integrated. It's complicated, but we've got to get the land registry back to the people of Ontario as fast as we can.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, Martin, thanks for doing this today.
Thank
Best of
you.
luck with this.
Yeah.
And people, it's something everybody should be interested in. So please follow up. Some of the links down below. And otherwise, your house, your property, your farm could be somebody else's. Okay, we're going to take a little break here on Liquid Lunch, that channel. We'll be right back after a little break.